Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience as well as to our panelists. My name is David Meltzer. I'm the Secretary General of GVF, and it's a pleasure to moderate the panel, which I'll shortly introduce. Let me take a minute or so just to describe the organization, GVF. As many of you know, GVF is the Global Trade Association for the satellite industry. We've comprised of member companies from all continents of the world, with the exception of Antarctica. We're working on that, but the Penguins seem unwilling to join at this time. We're also co-produced by Satellite Evolution Group, which many of you know as the leading publisher for the satellite industry, with a series of online video as well as print publications. Let me now introduce the panel. It's my pleasure to start with Antonio Bove. Antonio is the Director of Fixed Data Sales Europe for SES Networks. Antonio has held a number of product marketing and sales leadership positions throughout his career. His career spans 20 years. In addition to SES, Antonio has worked for Globalstar, the Leonardo Group, as well as Vsat. Jean-Michel Ouillou is currently the head of enterprise and broadband at ST Engineering iDirect. Jean-Michel is responsible for the company's strategy for enterprises, and he focuses on, in particular, the energy and banking and consumer broadband sectors. Jean-Michel previously spent time at ITC Global and worked for 20 years at Schlumberger. And finally, we're joined by Vinay Patel. And Vinay is a senior director for the international division of Hughes, and he's responsible for promoting the Hughes family of Vsat products, services, and value-added over-the-top solutions. And he focuses on satellite backhaul and Vsat-enabled community Wi-Fi in particular. So with that, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. And as you know very well, because we're all working from home these days, and it certainly is presenting some opportunities, but some challenges. And the topic of today's discussion really is focused on whether this increased work from home is going to change the use of the industries, the satellite industries, the use of the cloud, and how we view the cloud as an industry. And I want to start with a very broad question. What are the advantages of incorporating the cloud into satellite business? Are there tactical and strategic advantages? Of course there are, but what are they? I'm thinking about the cost structures, the business process streamlining, and business agility. And let me turn this over first to Vinay to offer his perspectives on what are the advantages of incorporating the cloud into the satellite business. So Vinay, over to you.
Thank you, David. Thanks for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Looking forward to a good discussion from my colleagues. So when we start our conversation, let's kind of define what the cloud means. You know, just browsing on the internet, basically the cloud is defined as any software or services that run kind of remotely in data centers, which may be privately or publicly offered. With software as a service. So, you know, with that definition in mind, how does cloud and satellite come together? So in our perspective with Hughes, we basically have, you know, two very important implications as a company, as a satellite industry leader. First, as a service provider itself, you know, we have the HughesNet service that's offered in the Americas now, in North America, South America. So we are a internet service provider with about 1.5 million users of our internet service. And the users can be a consumer in the house. It could be an enterprise customer as well. And they're accessing applications in the cloud. So, you know, there are implications in terms of performance, in terms of the latency, and I know how effectively, efficiently you can access those cloud applications. The second aspect that affects us as a organization, you know, with the COVID situation today, 95% of our employees have been working from home. in the last 3 months. We are slowly migrating back to the office, but all our office applications needed to work remotely. Some do use satellite, some use terrestrial means, but everything has to work. Our customers, whom are enterprise customers, when we deploy their gateways as an example, or we deploy equipment at their own premises, now we have to kind of remotely manage, remotely provision, remotely diagnose all of these capabilities. And these are already running on the cloud for ourselves at Hughes, and now we're just overly relying on them. And maybe the last point, as an infrastructure provider and as a service provider, we rely on the very high throughput satellites. The VHTS design is really moving to the cloud these days and towards centralized computing. So we're taking advantage of the cloud, not only in our own business, but in relying on the cloud to offer services to our own customers. So that's kind of our thoughts on satellite, the cloud, how we use it internally within Hughes, and how we use it externally in providing service to our customers.
Good. Well, certainly a lot of applications. I'm wondering, Antonio, what are your thoughts on the strategic and tactical uses of the cloud for the satellite industry? Antonio?
Thank you, David. And again, thank you for inviting me to join this panel. Well, when looking at the cloud, and you can look always at 2 dimensions on having the cloud integrated in your services. First of all, it's an element about cost. And at the end of the day, what SES is doing is to embrace the cloud. We were one of the first to embrace the cloud in order to make sure that we are able to bring the advantage of this technology into our services. This allows, in general, a reduction of upfront investor capital expenditure in terms of being able to better optimize operational costs. It allows also the company to be able to develop more easily solutions, and at the end also, if you like, distribute access to data. This is something that SES has been doing for its own perusal, mainly to be able to stay at the forefront in terms of service delivery. But and because of that, what we have been also doing is to change, if you like, dramatically the way SES has been going to the market, and also the way we have been we are actually service delivering our customer. With Microsoft, we have been actually making choice in order to completely redesign the business processes, and also at the end to be able to improve our agility in order to deliver service, which is at the end all about orchestration. It's all about the ability to push in a very flexible fashion commands in networks that are more and more becoming network defined. In addition to that, we have been looking also at the core of our network, which is composed of satellites in the sky and also ground components. So also those components are becoming, if you like, software defined, and those are very, let's say, are very important steps in order to make sure that the satellites and our infrastructure is able to cope with the future. With the software-defined satellite that we are currently designing and launching, we will be able to provide much higher level of flexibility in order to be able to reconfigure the satellite and the spectrum and the bandwidth in more flexible fashion. In addition to that, we have been also very public at the end announcing partnership in order to build, if you like, ground components. There are now more and more satellite hubs and modems and terminals that will be, if you like, becoming the software-defined infrastructure. We are working very hard in order to make sure that those hardware, those hubs are being able to stay and to be loaded on common platforms and then being able at the end to provide a seamless service. On the other side, there is all about the service component, meaning the revenue side of the house, which is at the end another dimension of how we will be able to grow the revenues there, and where at the end this, if you look from the end-to-end perspective, we'll be able to create value for our customers.
Very good. All right. Well, Jean-Michel, you want to offer us your perspective on the advantages of you working with the cloud for the industry, and how does your company do it?
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you also for inviting me to that panel. Yes, I mean, in line with what Antonio and Vinay said, there is multiple ways of looking at the cloud, but it's mainly driven by cost improvement, a reduction of costs for the operation of our infrastructure. So at ST Engineering iDirect, we have already taken significant steps in using the cloud in our infrastructure. Our latest generation of hub is using a private cloud. And the main driver for that is that we see, and Vinay mentioned PHTS and Antonio mentioned mPower, the more powerful those satellite networks become, the more computing power they need. And so either you can add racks and racks and racks in the teleport, or you can design a infrastructure that is highly scalable. And by doing it in the cloud, you can scale to the needs and the requirements of our customers. So that's why we are moving toward that technology. As a company, we also rely heavily on the cloud nowadays. I mean, we are, like everybody else, using CRM applications that are on the cloud. We're using Microsoft on the cloud. So, and it's as demonstrated during this COVID crisis, how efficient this technology is. Because I don't know if you realize that suddenly our IT department has to move from an environment where there are 200 or 300 people sitting in one building accessing one data center to 200 and 300 people sitting anywhere in the world or in France or anywhere in the world and accessing remotely from different type of access, different type of quality of services. And nevertheless, we still manage, thanks to the cloud, to be able to use all applications and services. So that's why ST Engineering iDirect see the future of the cloud as critical. The next step for us will be to move our NMS environment to a public cloud environment. So it will be easier for our customer to manage multiple hubs within this kind of cloud environment. So for us, cloud is cost effective, is scalability, and the capability of addressing the needs that the future Vsat satellite equipment will need, especially when you have multiple beams and very high throughput.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. And a reminder to the audience, if you do have questions, there is a button at the bottom of your screen, Q&A, and it's through there that you can post questions. We have received our first question, albeit through the chat function. And the first question comes from, and regrets if I mispronounce your name, but Dakani Sheikh Hussein. He's asking, during COVID-19, it's a very practical question, how do you manage installing new Vsat sites if the satellite technicians are working from home? And how do you troubleshoot any sites for issues? And I imagine our panelists or their colleagues have faced this for either their employees or contractors in the field who are tasked with going on customer premises, whether it's installing a Vsat or other equipment. And let me open it up to the entire panel if people want to take this question, which is, how are you managing during COVID-19 and the related lockdown for customer installations? Does anyone want to take that first question?
Or I could maybe I can start off here. You know, we have, as I said, 1.5 million retail customers, and we continue to add thousands of users per month, new customers every month. We've had to adapt. Obviously, you have to physically go to a site to install a physical Vsat. And that has required in some countries, you know, special permissions from the government, a letter authorizing Hughes as an essential service provider that enables the technician van to, you know, travel on the roads, to enter a town. We have found towns in South America where, you know, they are physically blocked. You know, they will cut down a tree and stop traffic from entering the town. If they've never seen you before, they'll not allow you to enter. And we have faced situations where even with an official letter, because these days anything can be called fake news or fake letter, you know, people are still skeptical. But we've overcome that, and you know, that's one part of installation, which is physically getting to the site. Then we have automated tools. In fact, ours is called on-site verification tool, where the installer at every step of the process takes a picture, he uploads, you know, using a locally attached Wi-Fi router, and you know, our back-end systems in the cloud, running in the cloud, are stepping through process of, okay, you've installed you know, the ground mount antenna, the antenna structure that's either on the side of the house or on the ground. You pointed the antenna, you've got signal, you've got lock, you've got traffic, all the way up to, are there any trees in the way? Are there any blockages? And then you get the customer to physically sign off, and we close that ticket as a complete installation. So everything is automated, and if there's a problem, the technician has the ability to contact our, in real time, tier 1, tier 2 help desks, either through the app, WhatsApp as an example, or with online chat. So we've managed to overcome, and in fact, we've never seen greater demand than the last 3 months in terms of new subscriptions to for the retail service.
Good. So for Mr. Hussein, it sounds like contact, if it's Hughes that he's working with, contact Hughes, and there are tools available to work around the lockdown, if you will, and hopefully, in many cases, those tools are enough. What about you, Antonio and Jean-Michel? Any additional perspectives on how people should manage during the lockdown when it comes to customer premises installations?
Well, from our side, since COVID became spread all over, we have been taking from SES very seriously the danger, if you like, and the associated risk of this pandemic. So, and the logic we have been following is definitely safety first for the employees, but also for the contractors of SES. So at the end, it's all about, let's say, also the type of application. There are some installations and applications that we must say that have been in a way delayed. When there was the possibility, and there were more about the criticality of the communication, at the end, safety of life, at the end was in a way at risk. This is where, in a way, with our partner, and of course, by complying with the regulation, we had the chance to find the way in order to provide connectivity. Unfortunately, in some cases, we had really, if you like, other challenges, because it's not only about the installer, but it's about also logistics. During the busy period, even the logistics were prioritized to the most critical goods. So this is where, at the end, we had to manage properly in order to ensure the safety of the company, of the employees, and the contractor, and then being able to manage on the extent it was possible.
Good, thank you. Jean-Michel, anything to add?
Yeah, well, for us, it was two problems. The first one was the installation of the remote is usually something handled by our customers themselves. SES, for example, is one of them. And so the way Antonio described the process is exactly what we were expecting from customers like that. But we also, as hardware vendors, we provide the tools to make it easier for our customer to deploy a new antenna. So in that particular case, we have applications that run on a smartphone that will use virtual reality, and so the installer will see the sky, where is the satellite you want to access, and can point the antenna. So we have made it as easy as possible. So in some cases, I have example of customers that have trained their clients to set up their antenna themselves. But for us, the main problem was to install hubs. Usually, hubs is not something you can do by installing with a smartphone. Unfortunately, I wish that we'll come to that, and pushing to the cloud is one way of doing it as well. But clearly, this has been a problem. Yes, sending technicians to install hubs. Not so much to send them, but as Vinay said, some countries don't allow them. But not only that, even if they allow you, when they come back, the country where they come from, they say, no, you don't come in anymore. So it was a challenge. And so as far as the remote sites are concerned, we had all the tools to do it. For the hub, it was a little bit more problematic.
Okay, so
maybe I can add a little bit on the hub side, if you don't mind, David. That's a very important aspect of getting the private solutions going again. What we did in January, February, as this was ramping up, the COVID situation, is we worked with our engineering teams and our operational engineers, system engineers, support engineers, and we actually developed automated tools which we can push out to our customer who has purchased a gateway. And we actually work remotely with them as they are installing, and we're monitoring with remote desktop what's happening in real time on the gateways. And we've gotten to the point where our customer their support engineers working with our support engineers are remotely, physically installing and configuring and getting that gateway up and working with, working with our operational staff as well as our deep support engineering. So that was another challenge. And in fact, that's going to pay dividends as we move forward, because it'll help us as a infrastructure provider make it easier for the customer to self-install gateways. Obviously, they're not going to install the 9-meter Ka-band dish, but the gateway itself, which goes in the data center, we're making it much easier for self-installation.
Thanks, Vinay. And so there are some creative solutions out there. Obviously, there are real practical problems with the lockdown. The phrase necessity is the mother of invention comes to mind. There's a follow-up question on this topic from Richard Mwako Quasimote. And he writes, when there is a problem on the Vsat in the remote area and an engineer needs to change a component before the link comes back online, how do you change it from home? Is this a practical issue, and has a solution been found? Does anyone want to take that question? All right, well, maybe we'll handle it.
That's an interesting one. I'm going to take it is now with my background of service provider than a hardware vendor. But usually in that particular situation, we found it that the most cost-effective way was to send a full kit back to the remote place, and where they replace all the components rather than trying to identify the problems in one of the components, because this was almost impossible to achieve without being a technician on the site. You don't necessarily have the tool to evaluate where the component that is failing or broken. So you send the replacement kit, and then you put it back online, and you ask the customer to send back the broken terminal, and we try to fix it. It's the way I used to do business.
Well, I think that still works. So no, that hasn't changed. So we've spent the last few minutes talking about the one impact of the pandemic and working from home. But there's another, I think, potential impact, which is on the revenue side. Do you think the pandemic has caused the cloud service providers to appreciate the revenue opportunity working with satellite communications? What's been the impact from their perspective? If I can, Antonio, ask you to take this question and share your thoughts on what's the impact of the pandemic in the perspectives of the cloud service providers on using satellite?
Well, what I can say is that the pandemic, if you like, just confirmed the trend. I mean, the cooperation between cloud providers and the satellite world is on the ground since months. So already in 2019, several deals and agreements have been sealed between the satellite world and the cloud world. Because at the end of the day, the direction of, first of all, a much faster modernization of the satellite environment. As I said, we have been embracing the cloud, because we are providing low latency services to our customer, and then we want also to embrace, and we want to capitalize on that flexibility also from our side. So the pandemic, I would say, accelerated or confirmed, if you like, that the direction was right. And in terms of revenue, probably it accelerated. I was looking at some data, and for sure, when you look at the take-up of over-the-top type of services, the pandemic for sure accelerated this kind of take-up of service, having more people being at home and so on. Having said this, from the revenue opportunity in general, we believe, and this is why the cloud provider are moving in the satellite direction, and also the other way around, the SATCOM provider are working with the cloud provider. This is because we believe there is a mutual benefit in cooperating. And on top of the cost savings elements that I mentioned before, there is a huge revenue opportunity. We need to know that we are at the moment in the fourth industrial revolution. While the first was the mechanization with steam power, the second was the mass production of electricity, the third one was the computer automation. Now we will sit in a world where the physical and biological system will be converging. This means that the volume of data traffic will increase dramatically, and specifically the data traffic is going into the cloud. Just to give you a bit of some quantity parameters, the Satcom cloud data traffic is going to increase from 2.9 exabytes in 2019 to around 52 exabytes by 2029, which will be at the end an increase at the CAGR of 34%. Just to give an example, 1 exabyte is 1 million of terabytes, so it's a huge amount of data. And the revenue will be also dramatically increasing by 6 times. So this means that this sheer volume of cloud will be transferred over telecommunication system, and the satellite will be a major part of those transmission requirements, mainly because we are actually becoming more and more instrumental, and that's why we're designing hybrid solutions that are able to have the terrestrial communication fully integrated with the satellite communications.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the other panelists? Please.
Sorry. Yeah. On our side, what we have been seeing from our customer point of view is that definitely this pandemic has generated an increase in revenue by the sheer need of more bandwidth. As Antonio said, there is a lot of our customers has reported that they are selling more bandwidth, and as a result, they usually means upgrade of the hubs and additional hardware in some cases. So yes, for us, the fact that we push to the cloud and need more bandwidth to have all access to all those applications are definitely a positive effect as far as our revenue is concerned.
Good, good. In Antonio's original remarks, he mentioned the partnership with Microsoft, and I'm wondering, and this is to all the panelists, not just Antonio to talk to, but do you panelists see this as something that many operators will start partnering with the cloud providers? What are the perceived advantages of doing that? And Antonio, maybe you want to start and just talk a little about the partnership and the thinking behind it.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, as I said, from the cloud strategy, we have been looking, first of all, at changing our own environment. And that's why we made the choice to move to the Azure cloud. But in addition to that, now looking at, if you like, the outbound process, what we have been doing also is to look at the way we deliver the service. This means service that are scalable and can be delivered with zero touch or the limited number of touch points. Mainly because our customer need speed of execution and then quality in order to deliver at the end point of any network, any kind of command and any kind of configuration. That's why we decided to work with Microsoft Azure, but more importantly, working with Amdocs, where at the end, they will be building the, if you like, the infrastructure that will manage all the orchestration of the services that SES will be delivering to the end customer, being the telcos, MNOs, and service providers.
Thank you. Any other perspectives on working with cloud service providers?
Yeah, but as I mentioned earlier, ST Engineering is looking at moving some of the components of their infrastructure onto the cloud. So that will definitely need partnership with cloud provider. We do not expect to put our NMS or customers' NMS on a pure private public cloud. It's going to be in a private environment, in a public cloud environment, for security issues and all of these kind of things. But the other component of it is, as a hardware vendors, we will have to work with the cloud because the most likely to succeed, the LEO constellation is going to be driven by the largest cloud provider in the world. So I guess that doesn't give us much choice, does it?
I think you're right. The next question that I have is really an open-ended one. With the increase in work from home, what products or services do you think need to be developed to meet this increased working from home? Let me start with Vinay to see if he has a perspective on new products and services to be developed with work from home. Vinay?
Yeah, sure. as I said, we have the largest retail customer base of anyone in the world, consumers on the order of 1.5 million. And those customers are accessing their applications in the cloud. And for the retail customer, those applications are typically streaming video, as an example, or WhatsApp. It could be social applications. And so what we have done is to ensure that the equipment is optimized, that we have enough throughput. All of our service plans these days for the retail customers have a minimum of 25 megabits in the forward direction, and then 3 to 5 megabits on the return direction. So, that's something that we're making sure that we do have in terms of the throughput capabilities, because the usage has gone up. And as the usage goes up, the number of people in a home using the Vsat has increased because the kids are home, maybe the husband, wife are at home also. So from a product perspective, then, we've already offered Wi-Fi, inbuilt Wi-Fi on our retail customer modems for a decade now. We also have additional products and services available for enterprise applications. For example, Hughes on SD-WAN, and that can be used for enterprise customers. And then we just announced SD-WAN work at home, which is when a small business, let's say a dental office who has 10, 12 employees, well, they're not working in the office right now, but they may be doing paperwork and insurance submissions and all the administrative work, but these people are at home. You might have 10, 12, 15 employees, which are accessing the office applications in the cloud. So this SD-WAN work at home offering allows you to basically replicate what they are doing in the office, but in their individual homes. And that adds security, because most people don't have secure access in the house. It's easy to break in, either through the Wi-Fi or through the cable modem. So we have, 3 products that I mentioned already. The last one that I've been working on the last almost 18 months to promote in LATAM is this Hughes Express Wi-Fi. And this is not necessarily work at home, but it's connecting communities who are unconnected at the moment, because the mobile operators find, there's only 20 homes or 30 homes and 100, 200 people. Those people are not connected, or they're at the edge of a coverage area, and they're raising their handset up and down and getting on a high point to catch coverage to make a WhatsApp call or a video call. So we have deployed Hughes Express Wi-Fi, this conjunction with Facebook, that basically manages an individual user's ability to buy Wi-Fi from a retail shop, just like he would buy potato chips. He goes to the store, he says, look, give me 1 hour of data usage. We typically price it at less than $1. And so it's very affordable. He gets a few hundred megabytes to use. He uses it one day, comes back 3-4 days later, he has to make a call. It's not necessarily work from home, but it's work in your community. And it's, the satellite is instrumental in enabling that kind of access, broadband access to people who are unconnected. So yeah, we have a number of products and solutions that are available to our customers, consumers, enterprises, communities around the world.
Thanks, Vinay. And your comment about affordability really struck home, because when you talk to a lot of regulators, as I do around the world, who are mandated to reduce the digital divide, if you will, their number one concern is affordability. I think most people know that satellite does provide connectivity, but the question for them is it affordable connectivity? And I think Hughes and other providers of community Wi-Fi have addressed that need, where it is capacity can be purchased in very affordable bytes for rural and otherwise underserved communities. Anyone else on the panel have a perspective on new products and services that need to be developed or have been developed for the increased work from home?
Yeah, David, I may have a couple of things to add. First of all, We also, at ST Engineering iDirect, support Wi-Fi in our modems and another whole portfolio of applications. One of the services that we provide to some of our customers is a very flexible methodology to increase bandwidth for remote sites. So as I said earlier, this crisis has increased the needs and more bandwidth in some location, and we give that flexibility to our customers to easily, to one specific terminal, give more bandwidth. But more importantly, that's what Vinay said, that during that crisis, we saw a huge inflation of YouTube and Netflix traffic, meaning people were staying home. Were they working all the time? I doubt, because they were watching a lot of movies. And one of the things that ST Engineering iDirect has with his, in his legacy in NewTek is an extremely good understanding of video. And video at the moment, and I'm sure Antonio will go in that direction, is a kind of a decreasing business as far as satellite is concerned. People are moving, don't find direct to home good enough, and they want to move more on OTT infrastructure. And with this crisis has highlighted that. And so you have a house with a Wi-Fi terminal, and then people use their phone, their iPad, the kids look YouTube Kids, the parents watch Netflix, all of that behind a single link. So what we are looking at ST Engineering iDirect is a way to better integrate video into data network, and leveraging on our experience in DTH, distribution of video in the traditional broadcast world, is try to move multicast into an IP environment, move the content distribution network down to the customer premises, and offer a better customer experience. So that is the thing that we have in the pipe at the moment. And then you were talking about new products that were kind of were there, but were not highlighted as so important to the market, now are becoming very, very important. So that's a trend that we have seen, and then we are trying to address very soon.
Good. Antonio, any thoughts on this?
Yes, just to add something here on the network side, what we have been doing is specifically looking at our existing networks, so our NEO type of networks. We had the chance to dimension the systems in order to upgrade over the air all the links that were available. We had projects in Latin America, in Alaska, where we had the chance to provide increased throughput. And this is again where you need to be able to provide high speed, high throughput in a very flexible fashion. So that's why it's important to be able to support bandwidth surge that at the end are requiring a much higher throughput in seasons or in moments where the demand is peaking beyond what was foreseen at the beginning, in order to provide the highest level of flexibility of our customers. And this is something that we had the chance to do in order to provide a quick response to our customers in the moment of need.
Thank you. I want to turn, we received two related questions, and they go back to the topic we were discussing a little while ago about the travel restrictions resulting from the pandemic and the issues in getting into customer premises. The first of the two related questions comes from Rwanda, Innocent Kanyove Zirahiga, and basically his question is, sometimes due to travel restrictions, you're really limited to finding a certified engineer, a Vsat installer in the particular country. And do the satellite operators, do you collect information, he asks, on who is certified in which country? And a related question comes from Dakhani Sheikh Hussein, where he noted that a lot of installers receive training from GVF and NetHope. And the question he has is, does GVF ever share the information of who is trained in what particular country with ISPs and Vsat companies? And just to answer the question for GVF, the answer is very much yes. We maintain a database. It's publicly available. And then we do respond to individual questions that we receive occasionally from companies looking for a GVF certified installer in a particular country. But to Innocent's question, how do your companies handle when the need for an installer in a particular country arises? Do you maintain lists of certified installers? How do you approach that issue, particularly in light of the travel restrictions resulting from the pandemic?
Maybe I'll give it a try on my, based on my experience. I've done at least 3 years of sales in Africa, and I know that in every country, just about every country, we have had customers for a decade or more. So we have a a list of clients who have already used Hughes solutions in the past, going back to our ISBN, generation 1 product, or personal earth station, it was called, about 20 years ago. So we have a long history of working, basically everywhere satellite is being used. So it may not be a formal list, but we have a database of existing customers. We support many of them still, for operational support and ongoing, help desk and so on. So we have a list of customers. We have partners, technicians, installation companies that have been used in the past. And so we can always call them up and say, okay, are you available? Can you travel to this location? If additional training is needed, we have coursework that's available online from our own training department to get them certified for our Jupiter 1, Jupiter 2, various products that have come online in the last 10, 15 years. So, we have deep experience base, and we can draw upon that to bear for any project that's coming up.
If I may add something, as I said before, SES has been changing in the way we are actually delivering services. So from being the traditional satellite operator and cell infrastructure, we are delivering end-to-end managed service. So for this particular type of service, it's instrumental to have a global network of installers and service providers. But more than that, it's also important to make sure that we are able to rely on the quality. So we actually enforce with training quality program in order to ensure that we are able to deliver the SLA on a global basis at the same quality everywhere we operate with our partners that at the end are representing SES in that specific moment. In addition to that, we work also with the GVF. We have several training programs that we have been doing specifically for the medium earth orbit, where the installers can get certified in order to install a medium earth orbit antenna. So this is definitely important for us to ensure that from the installation, the maintenance and the support of a given remote, we are able to provide the highest level of quality.
Thank you. Jean-Michel, anything to add, or we have another related?
No, Vinay and Antonio covered almost everything. We have partners as well, certified partner in almost every country in the world. They have been trained. They have technicians that are trained to install an antenna, and we can provide contact for those partners in the various countries. There was also, I noticed a question about a manual. We do have a manual. We do have a smartphone application that is kind of self-training as it can be for a smartphone application. It's virtual reality. A service called Point and Play, and it's part of all our offering free of charge. So I encourage you to go into the site and check that if you are really interested in finding an easy way to set up an antenna without a certified Vsat technician. But a TV installer may be needed, though.
Thank you. And I think Jean-Michel's referring to a question we received from Frederick Punarubia. And for the benefit of the other panelists, Frederick's question is, do your organizations create a guideline booklet directed to customers as the targeted audience so that the customer can align and adjust an antenna by themselves in those cases where it may be impractical for various reasons, not just COVID-19, for a local installer to be sent or someone from your company? So any perspectives from Vinay or Antonio on whether you have created these guideline booklets that Frederick was talking about?
Yes, we operate in the consumer business also here in Europe, and that's why for the installation is very critical to be able self-commissioning capabilities. We have a way to certify the installation with an app and in a way that is actually based on the location, is able to confirm that the installation is done properly. We have implemented what the so-called do-it-yourself capabilities that in some cases are used. So for example, in Germany, we have a lot of customers that they are able to make themselves the installation, while in other countries where still you may want to rely on installation, even because from the dish you want to be able also to have the cabling and the Ethernet properly done at home in order to interface with the wireless network at home. You want also to rely on a specialized installer.
Thank you. We have a question. I think it's very appropriate from Junaid Manzoor Mian, and Junaid is asking whether well, Junaid is noting that all of you have spent a lot of your careers in the field, and calling on that experience, Junaid is asking, what changes did you guys feel? I mean, are you seeing increased issues, troubleshooting issues? Is the work from home impacting new project installations? So I think the question really goes to, you know, your personal experience as people who have had a lot of experience in the field. What's been the biggest impact, if I can paraphrase the question, of the pandemic in your experience?
From you know, if I can add here, I've been with the company for 30 years, in fact, with Hughes. And you know, we've gone from Vsats that were 3.5 meters down to 90 centimeters, 74 centimeters. They've become very easy to install. They are almost self-installed, but we still you know, push out the technicians to do a professional installation. From our perspective, the COVID situation hasn't impacted us in almost, you know, 0% impact from our factory production, which is heavily mechanized. We have robots building our modems, putting together the entire kit that gets shipped out from our factories here in Maryland. You know, we have crews around the world who are trained to install for retail and enterprise applications. And even when we go to these smaller communities, as I mentioned, for our Wi-Fi projects, you know, we're finding enthusiastic customers, you know, retailers who's typically selling a Coca-Cola or, you know, potato chips or tacos. And all of a sudden, you know, they're learning to use a smartphone with an application that allows them with a click of a button without printing a coupon or, you know, any kind of local printers needed. No codes are exchanged. It just says, you know, here my customer, here's the data pack you want to buy, click buy, give me, you know, 50 cents equivalent in local currency. And, you know, the data basically gets downloaded into that customer's device. And he, you know, he goes around and uses the internet available from that Vsat and the Wi-Fi. So it's been very pleasant. You know, COVID is not pleasant, but the experience that we have had has been quite positive. You know, our growth is tremendous in the retail business. The enterprise business has slowed down a little bit, but the retail business is booming, and the Wi-Fi business is really booming. So, you know, I can't be more pleased than ever working at Hughes and seeing our customers happy and, you know, growing.
Thanks, Vinay. And Jean-Michel and Antonio, what's been the biggest surprise, good or bad, with the pandemic on what you see is occurring in the field? Jean-Michel, what's been your biggest?
Well, I mean, I think for first time, people realize that you can work from home. You don't need a manager on the back of your head to check what you are doing. Okay, that's the positive effect. The negative effect that people seem to think that lining up meeting after meeting is a good way to work, and that's so sometimes getting a little difficult. But as far as the business is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, we see our customer being happy because they generate more revenue due to the increase in bandwidth requirements. On our side, in terms of production and the delivery was no problem. I did mention that sometimes the installation of hub has been delayed and postponed a little bit. We didn't see much impact on the installation of remote terminal, but we don't have such a large retail base as Huge has. but we do have some projects in Latin America that kind of get a boost because of this pandemic effect. Our customer sees that there will be more and more needs for satellite connectivity in a real world. And you were talking about the digital divide. It may be also a good opportunity now. I think the governments are going to find out that they need to step in a little bit more than they used, because yes, the regulator complain it's too expensive, but they don't do much about it. Okay, so they say to their citizen, please do your online income revenue declaration. Oh, but you don't have internet. Oh, that's too bad. So, but they don't do anything to help them getting the internet. So I hope we see them stepping in a little bit and realize that this digital divide is a big difference, is a kind of discrimination for a lot of people. So all of this is kind of making. I have seen in my also 30 years career in Vsat, my first Vsat installation was an SCPC link between Singapore and Jakarta, 64K link. Was fairly easy to install, but the modem was the cost of a small car, and the bandwidth for 64K was a monthly revenue that a lot of people will enjoy on a yearly basis nowadays. So it has changed. The Vsat industry, the satellite industry has dramatically changed. And I think it is capable of reaching more people than it used to be. I think it needs to show that it's not as expensive as people think it is. We need to change that perception that because it's Vsat, because it's satellite, it's expensive. It's getting less and less expensive, and getting better and better. So I think I see the future as very good for us.
Thank you. And we're approaching the top of the hour. We have a couple of more questions, but Antonio, let me give you an opportunity. I mean, to answer the previous question, what's been the biggest surprise, good or bad, that you've seen as resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic? Antonio?
Well, the biggest positive surprise for sure that we gained the time and probably also where productivity in a way has been increasing. If you look at our past, I mean, we were spending a good 1 hour, if not 2 per day by commuting from our home to the office. That takes time to prepare to get there. So then this is then where you can be on deck at 8, 9, depending on where you leave your home. With the pandemic, you are able to get on deck at 7. After your shower, you can be online and start, if you like, your duties. And this, at the end, was a positive surprise. So showing that we can spend much better our time, and definitely in terms of productivity, this is something that we all gain and experience differently. In terms of the negative aspects, well, first of all, we all realize that we rely a lot on the physical logistics, if you like, meaning in this virtualization of world, there are a lot of things that you can put on the cloud, but still there are also a lot of elements that require some personalization. The installation of a given Vsat, or even the movement of hardware and components that need to fly, need to be able to be stored. So this is where, at the end, still the physics of the logistics has an important impact on us. But definitely also, if you like, then this pandemic gave us the view that there are a lot of steps of our life and also our working duties, of course, that can be digitalized. And I believe there is a huge realization that a lot of stuff can be done in a more flexible fashion. And if the trend, and I said before, it was already understood before, I think that the pandemic just confirmed and accelerated the changes that we will see happening down the road in the next months that will become the new norm.
Thank you. Well, very good perspectives on the surprising, I think, to some benefits of the response to COVID-19 from a business perspective, as well as from a digital divide perspective, as well as the obvious problems. We have a question from Emil Diga, which highlights, I think, a practical issue associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. And the question has to do with the availability of equipment. Obviously, equipment occasionally fails, not as often as it used to, fortunately, but when it does fail, how are your companies addressing the need to ship replacement equipment and sometimes across national borders, which may be closed. Is this a problem? And if so, how have you and your companies overcome it? Anyone want to address the issue of travel restrictions on equipment, replacement equipment?
Definitely. We have faced that very same situation where equipment, because it's manufactured in the U.S. with the highest number of COVID cases now, we may be shipping COVID, which is not the case, but it goes in and it's not allowed in the country. So, I mean, the challenge here is to convince the customs authorities to get the equipment cleared or have pre-installed inventory. Luckily, in our retail business, we have forecasts that allow us to ship equipment throughout LATAM, through Mexico, and if needed, we can drive it through the Central American countries and get to Colombia and Peru, Ecuador, Chile, and so on. Brazil is a big market for us, and that's proven to be a difficult issue. So right behind the US, it's Brazil in terms of COVID. So that's been a big challenge. We are coming to grips with it. It's going to probably come into the picture here as we go into the third quarter. So far, we haven't had issues shipping to Brazil, but you never know. You never know what's coming down the pike, and we have to tackle it. There's no production issues. Our robots are working day and night to get the equipment built. Our factory's running, 2 shifts right now to meet the demand. And so from a supply side, there's no issue. There's a little bit of issue, as you mentioned, in getting equipment shipped out, but we're handling it as it arises.
Thank you, Vinay. Any other perspectives, Antonio or Jean-Michel?
Yeah, a bit like Vinay, we don't have many issue on shipping our equipment across. Most of them, we had delay because the process and the procedures have become more stringent. There is less flight or less ships to send the goods. So yes, there are delays, but the big international couriers companies still operate and still can deliver. In that particular question was kind of an emergency delivery. This can always be achieved at a cost indeed, but that always can be achieved.
So it sounds like it is a problem. Solutions are generally available, but certainly that is one of the consequences of the impact. So I hope Emil, who is writing us from Goma in the DRC, hope this addressed his question. We're just about at the top of the hour. We had scheduled to end this webinar at the top of the hour, but if I can ask the panelists to stay online for just a few minutes more, because there is a remaining question which I think is very good. It goes to a long-standing issue. It comes again from Dakhani Sheikh Hussein. And Dakhani writes that there are still compatibility issues between the satellite equipment manufacturers. Is there any hope that interoperability will ease the swapping of equipment and make it easier to work from satellite to satellite?
So David, you have to extend the seminar just for that question. I thought we said top of the hour. We should stop there, shouldn't we?
It's a very big question.
I know you love that one, don't you?
Is it going to happen in our lifetime, or are there just good business or practical reasons why?
How old are you?
If you want, I can play the referee role.
All right.
Maybe in a one sentence or 1 minute, if we were to try to describe, what the challenge is, because everyone has different techniques of getting the most bits out of their satellite, of their cell phone or hosted satellite, and then you have the ground equipment, which is the same thing. How do you get the most performance, most throughput, most IP packets through the gateway? And everyone implements different techniques of doing that. Now, if we implement some technique to do that, let's say SES or iDirect or whomever would like to be compatible, there's a whole process of certification. So now you have added cost to certify whether the equipment works end to end. As the one manufacturer changes some technique, the others have to kind of follow along and certify. So it just adds cost, and it adds time to market. So not in our lifetime. I don't think it's going to happen.
Jean-Michel and Antonio, do you agree?
Well, I think Vinay hit the nail, yeah, because it's also a cost issue. Okay, so you want a universal modem, but then what if it costs 3 times more than a proprietary one? Are you willing to spend that kind of money? And also, what about troubleshooting? I mean, putting a modem that works is okay, but once it stops working, and then you have an iDirect modem that is connected to an HNS, I can guarantee you that the finger pointing battle is going to be very interesting. So yeah, it's a good question. And I think we see technology like SD-WAN and everything that we make life easier for our customer. But would we have a one standardized modem that will work on any platform? I don't think so, because in any case, that will be driving the performance to the bottom rather than to the top. And so what we want is a better modem, more efficient modem. And I don't think a universal one will be able to achieve that. Will it be one day, maybe made by a third party? Maybe. But then in that case, not only the problem of the cost, but the problem of the support and the maintenance is going to be a nightmare for our customer. And I don't think that's what they want to do.
Antonio?
Allow me to conclude and to be, if you like, the challenger in this respect. So first of all, well, I appreciate that as a cost implication. So we, from SCS perspective, we are working and we have been pushing to have a software-defined modem and hub. We understand that it's complex, and we understand that it makes sense for sure for the high-end kind of modem, while if you want to go to the low end, this is something that may be considered differently. But if you allow me an analogy, the same challenges and that has been solved properly are from the telecommunication world. And with the GSM standard, then 3G and 4G, the interoperability was by design, and it is actually allowed 3G, the GSM technology, to become mainstream, to win against the US, the CDMA technology, and so on, and now become a worldwide standard. So I think that if you want really to look at this, we can see at the costs. Of course, there are cost components that we need to understand, but then it's also about what are the gains that actually we can gain in order to have a more interoperable network where the terminals would roam, one modem could roam in one hub and the other. This would give for sure much higher level of flexibility, and this is something that from the satellite world that has been in a way generally consolidated around some positions. This is something that for the future could be a way forward.
Well, thank you, Antonio, for the optimistic or hopeful words. I think that's a good place to end this webinar. I appreciate certainly the audience for hanging in there. We have run just a few minutes beyond our end time. But let me just conclude by really thanking our panelists. I know the audience is equally appreciative of your time and excellent answers. I think we've covered a broad range of issues arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic. I've heard some really good, surprising, in some ways, positive impacts, notwithstanding the human tragedy, of course. So thank you once again. Just a reminder, the video of this webinar will be available in the next day or so. And very much hope that our audience joins us for our next webinar in our series, which will be in 2 weeks' time at the same hour of the day in 2 weeks from today. And with that, I wish everyone a very good day, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.